And now going back to the SAA story that we read for you just now, South African Airways has terminated its relationship with BnP Capital following an outcry over its failure to follow proper tender procedures in appointing the company to manage over 1 billion rand in debt. Now, the board of SAA allegedly went against the advice of its own treasury by agreeing to pay BnP Capital a 256 million rand success fee to advise the airline of 15 billion rand debt restructuring and fundraising without putting the contract out to tender. SAA says the decision was communicated to BnP Capital on Wednesday. And now joining me on the phone line is Ivan. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Afternoon.
All right. Now, do you think SAA succumbed to public pressure for them to terminate the deal with BnP Capital?
Well, we served court papers on them at 10 to 2 yesterday, and at 4 o'clock we saw the media reports that they had cancelled all agreements with BnP Capital, but we only received written confirmation of that at 7 o'clock last night. I believe that the information was good enough and in the public domain to create enough pressure for them to capitulate, because they knew if they continued with this, they would have landed themselves in big trouble, because they would have been guilty of gross financial misconduct. Hello?
The outer has also been calling for the termination of that contract with BnP Capital. What's your reaction to this development?
I beg your pardon, could you just repeat that?
I'll just move on to another question for you, sir. Do you think the termination may also be related to the status of the financer BnP?
I believe so, yeah. BnP only had a turnover of about 5 million rand apparently in the last 3 years. We've seen their offices. It's a very small company. We don't think they would be well poised to source that kind of funds for SAA or to advise SAA for that matter. There are many companies that are better positioned to do that.
And now, was this a step in the right direction for SAA? Are they likely to cope since they no longer have a financer that will help restructure their finances?
Sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Can you just repeat that?
Since part of the deal was to advise SAA and help it restructure its debt, what is likely to happen to SAA?
Well, my understanding is that SAA had internally already made appropriate arrangements for what it is they should do, so that it was not necessary in the first place for them to have continued with that agreement. They had the sources internally. They had the skills internally to give them that kind of advice. At most, they would have provided some kind of review or oversight of the work done internally, but I'm also not satisfied that BnP had the skills to second-guess the work done by SAA's internal staff.
All right, thank you so much for joining us on the phone line. And now also, right now, we are joined on the phone line by Clive Ramatibela Smith. A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for your time here at AN7. Now, do you think SAA succumbed to public pressure for them to terminate the deal with BnP Capital?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to you. I think that in any instance when you're doing with business, you need to have done proper due diligence, understanding exactly what is required of you as the business service provider and the people who would have had to get those services. So I believe that even if the public pressure didn't come on board, I think that the decision to have appointed somebody who is inferior would itself stand a big problem when it comes to justifying why you would have chosen this particular service provider at such a high amount of fees. And over and above that, how do you know that the skills that are required and the kind of mandatory requirements still meet the standard? That is what I think think would have brought them into a situation where they have to cancel partnerships. If you had done proper due diligence, you would have picked up that these particular BnP Capital did not have, in actual fact, the financial services license that is required for them to provide those services, and they tried to actually apply for it, and it had lapsed. So if that being the case, it sounds bad, because if it was a good company with good standing, with good advisory, it would be good for a small to medium enterprise to get an opportunity like that. But it's the due diligence that worries us, that there were some things that were not looking straight, and that's why the deal, unfortunately, has collapsed.
All right. Now, do you think the termination may also be related to the status of the financer BnP?
Let's be honest, we are living in a country where we want SMMEs to actually do well, to actually continue to do fantastically well, because we know they need to strive from business. And we cannot discriminate and say, because you're a small participator, then you're not allowed to be given an opportunity to service clients that are big. That would be an unfair. If the company has the skills and the company has the understanding and the company has the expertise, there shouldn't be a reason why you shouldn't appoint them. What is concerning is if the company, even though it has those skills, but does not have the capacity, and that's what worries us, the capacity to render those particular services. That is my biggest concern. If you fail at any point, if you have done a proper due diligence, you would have picked this up. So the answer to your question, Lesego, is that they failed to do a proper due diligence, and therefore it has nothing to do with the size of the company. It has everything to do with the capacity that the company can handle, if they can handle the work that they were offered. And that for me means that these guys were not prepared, and they would not be able to fulfill those requirements, and therefore they shouldn't have had the deal in the first place.
And now, since part of the deal was to advise SAA and to also help it restructure its debt, what is likely to happen to SAA?
Well, if they've done a proper exercise, and I know there's a number of fantastic businesses, including black business, that will be able to handle that type of work. We have great advisory firms. I'm not going to mention names. We know them. They're there. And they are available that can do it. And they've got actually a longer years of experience than the likes of BnP. And they have a stronger financial balance, a balance sheet that is much more convincing. The work and the experiences, and they've even worked internationally, some of these companies. So what seems to puzzle us is, why would you go for an inferior business when you've got very good businesses out there that could have helped you with strategy, helped you with planning, reviewing, and executing the turnaround strategy? So this means that there was something that was not right about appointing this particular service provider, because the objectives were so massive, especially knowing the status of SAA. They were so massive that you would have wanted to see somebody more diligent being able to execute that particular work.
All right, thank you so much for your time. And we were joined by economist Clive Ramatibela Smith.